spoke about one of my motivations for doing the conference, which is around wealth creation for people of color. So this is another way we could think about wealth creation, right? Exiting your startup. So without further ado, for closing on your acquisition, wealth creation, exit strategies, we want to bring up Dr. Kelly Burton, Kange Kaneene, Ian Falou, Antonio Key, and Brandon Hoffman. And I'll have you guys introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Hey. So I am Kelly Burton, and I'm the founder of Founders of Color. We are the fastest growing community of minority entrepreneurs in the country. And our vision is to close what we call the small business growth gap. And I'm so excited to be here for the inaugural event. But before we jump in, I just want to shout out the ladies. Like, can we give a hand for the ladies? I know this is Black Men Talk Tech, but they're giving you all this inspiration up in here, all this beautiful brilliance. Shout out to the ladies, but really you guys are all the real MVPs because it's almost 5 o'clock and y'all are still here. So that in and of itself is a testament to your commitment to this work and this issue and this topic. And so I'm going to give our panel an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Hi, everybody. Kange Kaneene, based in New York. I work for SAP, which is a large enterprise software company. I focus on business development, so that means creating partnerships, looking for acquisitions, and then working with SAP's corporate venture arm to source companies that fit our ecosystem.
Hey, everyone. Hello. Hey, everyone. I'm Ian Falou, out of Austin, Texas. Any Texas guys in here? All right, dang. All right, I'm holding it down. Let's see. Enterprise software companies. Anybody running an enterprise software company? All right. So I run a venture capital fund out in Austin. It's focused on enterprise software companies that can serve the federal government. It's called LMI Ventures. But before that, and I think the reason why I'm on this panel is because I ran a software company prior to that called GitLinks. We venture-backed primarily out in New York City, that area, moved the company out to Austin, and then we sold last year to a company called Infor out in New York City.
Hi, everyone. My name is Antonio Key. I work for Samsung Next, which is a subsidiary of Samsung Electronics, focused specifically on driving innovation at Samsung through software and services. My specific capability is focused on corporate development side, so acquisitions as well as facilitating business development and partnerships. Prior to that, well, actually, still within Samsung Next, Brandon and I also co-founded the Diverse Founders Initiative, which is meant to find and provide resources for diverse founders. Prior to that, I worked on Wall Street at Merrill Lynch, focusing on M&A.
Hey everyone, Brandon Hoffman. So I'm also at Samsung Next, co-founder of Diverse Founders Initiative. So definitely one of the main reasons that I'm here. The day job though at Samsung Next, I'm on the innovation and research team. So really what that means, I pretty much work directly with the chief innovation officer of Samsung Electronics, who's also the president of Samsung Next, really shaping kind of our forward-thinking views of the future of certain industries, demographics, geographies. And that's pretty similar to what I was doing prior on Wall Street. So I was at Morgan Stanley, covered internet, so Mary Meeker's old team essentially from way back when. And I had the fun time of covering Amazon. So in addition to a handful of other stocks, was always kind of focused on the future and how they might be disrupting spaces, but also covered and worked on 4 IPOs while I was there. Big ones like Snap and Blue Apron, which were unicorns, but even smaller ones. So I want to dispel sort of the notion that it's, you got to be a $10+ billion mega cap IPO. Despegar, was a OTA, an online travel agency in Latin America. So much smaller, much lower profile. So, sort of have a feel for everything in between.
Awesome. So a little bit of background about me. I'm from Camden, New Jersey. Anybody know? Hey! What the heck? I don't understand this. Hey! I don't understand. Sorry.
Jersey in the house.
Yeah, Jersey in the house. I know there's some Philly folks. My folks are from North Philadelphia. Hey! So that means we're a little hood. So I'm going to be keeping it real. I know this is a very sophisticated conversation we're having up here about acquisitions and exits and things. But we're going to keep it real. And when I was growing up, when you had businesses in the community, exit meant that daddy died, and we were trying to figure out who was going to run the business. That was the exit. Daddy had a business, daddy died, and if daddy had a great business, everybody was fighting over who would run it. And if daddy didn't have so great a business, everybody was trying to ditch the responsibility of having anything to do with it. I say that to say our understanding as a community about what it means to acquire, to exit businesses is very nascent and early stage. So I want to make sure that we are all kind of grounding ourselves in this conversation and on the same plane, because even starting Founders of Color in the last few years, these are topics that I'm just getting ramped up on. So I would love for our panel to help to bring us up to speed for those of us who are relatively new to this conversation. When we say exit, what are we referring to?
So I think it's been mentioned a couple times here today already. You first have to figure out what type of company you are, right? So are you a company that makes profit from day one? That in some cases could be called a lifestyle company, which means you'll probably run that company till the day you die, or you die and then your kids take over. Yeah. And that's a lifestyle company. You have to understand that when you take investor money, the way they get their money back is going to be an exit, right? So they are putting money into you, asking you to grow and get bigger so that you sell yourself at some point. So an exit is either an acquisition by another company, or it's an IPO, and I think we'll get into some understanding of what IPO is. But those are probably the top two ways of getting money out of a company, is when you sell your company or you IPO.
Yeah, and it really comes down to a simple way to think about it is kind of a change of control, right? So if you are a sole proprietorship, you have this business, you own 100% stake in the company. If you want to raise money, you know, you're going to forfeit or relinquish some amount of control in exchange for cash considerations, what have you, to help you scale your business. And so when we talk about exit in the traditional simple sense, it's effectively you relinquishing your control, which is overall, you know, say in terms of financial business voting decisions, right, which can really dictate the direction of a company. So that's kind of a simple way I like to think about it.
And my understanding is with an acquisition, you can really sell your business at any size, because I know several six-figure businesses who have sold to someone else. So acquisition is regardless of stage, but with an IPO, that's very different. So can you talk a little bit about the distinctions?
Talk about IPO?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely right. You know, in terms of an acquisition, sometimes people are acquiring the team, really, you know, especially where there's sort of a race for talent in areas like AI and whatnot.
And that's called acqui-hires in traditional sense. We do that.
You know, you may be buying the product, could be something that doesn't generate a profit or anything like that, so it's not going to be, you know, beneficial to the P&L, but strategically, you know, maybe it's something that aligns with the core business of you know, the acquirer. Or maybe it is a full-fledged, you know, scalable operating business that's profitable. And then at that point, you know, you see some of these major acquisitions or mergers, right, in industry. So again, yeah, it could be of any size, sort of at any time. An IPO, I mean, generally is going to happen later on, right? You're not going to just see a team ever be able to go public. A product, maybe, and that's where you see all these unprofitable, you know, essentially products or services that haven't yet, you know, sort of achieved that maturity as a business. So especially in the tech sector, you do see that a lot. Or you'll see something, you know, could be 10, 15, 20 years, you'd be surprised. You know, something like Jose Cuervo has been around for decades and decades, went public, you know, just like a few years ago, right? But it's a family-owned business over 100 years old. So again, no rule to it, but generally it's going to be something a little more established. And so in terms of control, I mean, an IPO, just, yeah, the basics, right? That's where you see and hear that they are going to Wall Street, they're going to the stock markets to raise capital. So rather than going into the office and pitching a venture capitalist, you're sort of doing it now on this big platform. You go through someone like my team when I was at Morgan Stanley, and now I'm talking to dozens and dozens of investors out there, hedge funds, mutual funds, even some venture capital. You're starting to see the lines blur between them all. And And so, that's essentially what it is. Primary and secondary, again, more buzzwords, but really, sometimes you're raising additional capital, and that's something that's going to be injected into the business to help it grow. Or sometimes it's more of a liquidation event. So it's secondary. A lot of people have shares, and now employees, founders, investors, right, prior investors, the VCs, need and want to get those out to the market. And so again, they'll go through a bank to sort of just do it in mass rather than each round, that's private with VCs.